I wasn't supposed to be there that late. The cafe near campus usually emptied out by 9, but I stayed, pretending to study, rereading the same page for an hour. My coffee had gone cold long before she walked in. Professor Hale. She wasn't the kind of teacher anyone forgot, not because of her looks, though people whispered about those too, but because she spoke like she'd lived every line she quoted. Even now, under the dull cafe lights, she looked more real than she ever did in lecture halls. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands falling in ways that didn't seem accidental. She ordered tea. No sugar, no milk. I remembered that from the first week of class. She saw me before I could look away. "Still awake?" she asked, voice soft enough to make the question sound almost personal. I smiled, or tried to. Trying to be. Midterms. She smiled back, small and uneven, the kind that looked like it cost her effort. "Those essays aren't kind, are they?" "Neither are your prompts," I said before I could stop myself. That made her laugh. Not loud, but genuine. The kind of laugh that cracked something open in the air between us. She slid her books onto the table next to mine. "Then maybe you'll teach me something tonight," she said, half teasing. I knew she didn't mean it like that. But it sat in my head anyway. We didn't talk about class after that. She asked about music instead, the kind I listened to when I was supposed to be writing. I told her about a song that made everything feel slower, like time had decided to stop rushing. She nodded, eyes tracing the rim of her cup instead of me. For a moment neither of us spoke. The hum of the espresso machine filled the silence. She reached for her tea, and her hand brushed mine. It wasn't long. Barely a second. But it was enough for something to shift, quiet, invisible, impossible to name. She froze, then smiled again, but this time differently, smaller, guarded. "Sorry," she murmured. "It's okay," I said, though my voice didn't sound steady. We both looked down at the table, pretending to care about the napkins. Mine was already folded into a perfect square, refolded again. Her fingers lingered on her cup, tapping once, twice, then stopping. When she stood to leave, the chair scraped softly against the floor. "You should get some rest," she said. "Don't let your grades depend on caffeine. Can I quote you on that?" "You can quote me on anything," she said too fast, then laughed like she wanted to take it back. She slipped her scarf around her neck and hesitated. The pause wasn't long, but it held something I couldn't read. "Good night, Daniel." She'd never said my name before. Not once. And then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a chime that felt louder than it should have. I stared at the empty chair. Her tea sat half finished, the handle turned toward where I'd been sitting. I should have left then. Instead, I reached out and turned it back, as if that small correction meant something. My phone buzzed just as I started to pack up. One new message. "Unknown number, next time, let's make it more of a lesson." I looked at it until the screen dimmed. Then I smiled, not out of confidence, but confusion, something close to hope and fear mixed together. The cup still smelled faintly of her perfume. And I knew I wouldn't sleep. I told myself it was nothing, a slip, a test, maybe even an accident. Professors didn't text students, not like that. Still, every time my phone lit up, I hoped it was her. When it wasn't, I'd lock the screen and stare at my reflection in the black glass, trying to look unbothered. But on Thursday, after class, she stopped me. "Daniel," she said, as the last few students filed out. Her tone was careful, the kind people use when they've already decided not to say too much. I turned, pretending not to expect it. "Yeah? Do you have a moment? I wanted to go over your essay draft." Her desk was cluttered with papers and a half-eaten apple, the kind of mess that somehow looked intentional. She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat. She read a paragraph aloud, then paused. "You write like you're apologizing for something." I laughed, unsure what else to do. "Maybe I am." That made her look up, not at my paper, but at me. "For what?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Everything." Her lips curved, but not into a smile. "That doesn't go away," she said softly. You just learned to live with it. The room felt smaller after that, like the air between us thickened into something else. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she was already marking another sentence, her pen trembling slightly. Later, she asked if I wanted to grab a tea before I left. You can pretend it's still part of your lesson, she said with that half-laugh that never quite reached her eyes. We sat by the window this time. Evening light spilled across the table, orange and slow. She stirred her tea though she hadn't added sugar. I watched her hands, the way her thumb traced the rim of the cup without purpose. Were you ever married? I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't flinch. Was, she said. Long time ago. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just honest. What happened? She took a sip before answering. He stopped seeing me. I guess I stopped trying to be seen. Then she smiled like it wasn't sad at all. Something in my chest pulled tight. He must have been blind. She looked at me then, really looked, long enough that I forgot what I just said. Then she whispered, You shouldn't say things like that. I know, I said. But I meant it. Her eyes softened, but her shoulders stayed tense, as if she was holding the moment still, afraid to let it change shape. When we finally stood to leave, she reached for my paper folder at the same time I did. Our fingers brushed again. This time neither of us pulled away. It was only a second, 2 maybe, but it carried the weight of everything we hadn't said. She cleared her throat. I'll see you next week, Daniel. I nodded, forcing a small smile. You know, this lesson's turning out harder than I thought. That made her laugh, quiet, real. Then you're learning something. And just before she turned, she touched my sleeve, not my hand, not my arm, just the edge of fabric near my wrist. A gesture small enough to forget, but impossible to ignore. Instead of her usual spot behind the desk, Professor Hale sat on the edge of it, closer to the first row, closer to me. She said it made the discussion feel less formal. But every time her knee brushed the table, every time her eyes flicked up to meet mine, it felt anything but that. I tried to focus. Tried to take notes. But all I could think about was the way her scarf smelled faintly of cedar and rain. Halfway through the lecture, someone knocked on the open door, a younger professor, tall, loud, too familiar. Evelyn, he said easily. Don't forget the faculty dinner tonight. The room shifted. The name. The tone. I looked at her. She looked different. Pulled back, distant. Thanks, Mark. I'll be there, she said, polite but sharp-edged. The door closed. The quiet that followed was heavier than before. She cleared her throat and continued, but the warmth in her voice was gone. I caught her glancing toward me once, maybe twice, and then not again. After class, I lingered, slow to pack up, slower to leave. She stayed seated, pretending to review papers. When the room finally emptied, she exhaled, shoulders dropping. Faculty dinner? I asked. She smiled without looking up. Apparently. Sounds fun. It's not, she said, still writing. Then, quieter. It's just expected. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just stood there, until she finally looked up, her expression softer now, almost tired. Daniel, she said. You should go. You don't owe me your evenings. I hesitated. It's not about owing. Her pen paused midair. The silence stretched again. Don't, she said gently, almost pleading. Please. Not now. That should have been it. But later, I saw her outside the cafe again, same corner table, same cup of tea. Only this time, she wasn't reading. She was just sitting there, staring out the window like she'd forgotten where she was. I walked in before I could talk myself out of it. You're avoiding me, I said. Her head lifted. A small, startled breath. I'm not. Then what are you doing? She didn't answer. Instead, she motioned for me to sit. I did. We didn't talk for a while. The hum of traffic filled the space between us. Finally, she said, You're too young to understand how these things break. What things? She met my eyes, steady, unguarded for the first time. Boundaries. The words sat there, sharp as glass. I wanted to tell her I didn't care. That I couldn't stop thinking about her. But I didn't. I just watched her reach for her cup, watched her hand tremble slightly, watched her stop pretending she didn't notice mine resting close, too close. She exhaled, soft like surrender. You make it very hard to do the right thing. I'm not asking you to, I whispered. For a moment the world narrowed, the sound of rain starting outside, her breath mixing with mine. She leaned forward, just enough that I could see the reflection of the street lights in her eyes. Then she blinked, pulled back, and the distance returned. We should both go, she said. But her hand lingered on the table, halfway between us. Neither of us moved. If she hadn't stood up just then, I think I would have kissed her. It started raining again. Not the loud kind, just a soft, steady drizzle that blurred everything outside the library windows. She'd asked me to help carry some books to her car. Nothing unusual. Nothing that should have meant anything. Except it did. The hallway was empty, quiet enough to hear the rain tapping the glass. Her heels echoed against the floor, measured, careful. I followed a step behind, carrying half her stack. When we reached the exit, she stopped, watching the rain. Looks like we're trapped, she said. I smiled. Could be worse. She gave me a look, not quite scolding, not quite amused. You think everything's an invitation, don't you? I shook my head. No. Just this. She sighed, half-smile fading. You don't make this easy. I don't think it's supposed to be. We stood there, rain dripping from the awning, both pretending we weren't waiting for something to happen. Her hair was a little damp, a strand sticking to her cheek. Without thinking, I reached out, brushed it away. She froze. I pulled my hand back immediately. Sorry. Her voice came quieter. Don't be. We ended up sitting on the bench near the faculty lot, the books stacked between us like a wall that neither of us moved. The rain softened, turning into a mist that clung to the air. She stared ahead, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Do you ever think about how something small can ruin a whole life? I didn't answer. She went on. One wrong sentence. One look. One. She stopped herself. You start thinking maybe you should just stop before it becomes something you can't control. I studied her profile, the way her jaw tightened when she tried to sound detached. You mean this? She let out a small laugh, dry and sad. You always make me say what you already know. I just want to understand, I said. She turned to me then, slow, deliberate. You already do. The rain hit her glasses. She didn't blink. I could see it in her expression, the push and pull of wanting and restraint. Why me? I asked before I could stop myself. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. You remind me of something I used to be, she said. Before I started worrying what everyone would think. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just looked at her, really looked, and the space between us felt too fragile to breathe in. She exhaled, a trembling sound. This isn't fair to you. Then tell me to stop. Her eyes flicked down to my hand resting near hers. That's the problem, she whispered. I can't. Silence. Only the rain. I leaned forward slightly. Just enough that the air between us broke. Her gaze didn't move. Her lips parted barely. And then, she stood. Quick, abrupt. The books wobbled on the bench. We should go, she said, voice uneven. I nodded, staring at the space where she'd been sitting. She didn't look back as she walked to her car. If she had, even once, I think either of us would have stopped. The next week, she didn't show up for class. No email. No announcement. Just a substitute and a note on the board. Professor Hale will return next session. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a conference. Maybe she was sick. But the hollow in my stomach said otherwise. I stopped by the cafe the next 2 nights. Same table, same chair by the window, empty. Even the barista noticed. She usually comes in around 7, he said. Guess she's taking a break. A break. The word felt wrong. When she finally returned, she looked different. Not in the obvious way, no dramatic change, but quieter, like something inside her had been rearranged. Sorry for the sudden absence, she told the class. Family matter. Her tone made it sound like a period, not a comma. But when her eyes met mine, the air shifted again. Briefly. Then she looked away, flipping through her notes too fast. After class, I stayed behind. She didn't. Professor. She was already halfway to the door. Not today, Daniel. I froze. Did I do something? That stopped her, for a moment. She didn't turn, just said, You didn't do anything. That's the problem. And then she left. The distance lasted a week. 2. I tried to study. Tried to act normal. But every place I'd ever seen her felt haunted. The lecture hall, the bench near the parking lot, the teacup she always left half-finished. Finally, I went to her office. The door was cracked open, light spilling across stacks of papers. I knocked once quietly. Come in, she said. Her voice was tired. Older somehow. She didn't look up from her desk. You shouldn't be here. I needed to know if you're okay. She sighed. You're kind, Daniel. But that's not enough. What happened? Her pen stilled. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, my daughter came home early. That stopped me. I didn't know you had a daughter. She's in college. Around your age. She looked up now, eyes sharp but sad. That's why this has to stop before it becomes something ugly. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Everything inside me twisted, shame, confusion, maybe even guilt. She stood, gathering her things. You'll forget this, she said, like it was an instruction. You'll move on. You should. Her hand brushed past mine again, this time by accident, or maybe not. But she didn't stop to notice. That night I typed a message. I don't want to move on. I just want to understand why it felt real. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over. Send. Then I locked my phone and set it face down. Outside, the rain had started again, slow, uncertain. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence that it was the last week of the semester when I saw her again, not in class, not at her office, but outside the library, near the same bench where we'd waited out the rain weeks ago. She looked almost the same dark coat, same calm expression, but there was a weight behind her eyes now, a carefulness. She saw me before I could decide whether to walk away. Daniel. Her voice was softer than I remembered. You shouldn't be here. I wasn't looking for you. I lied. She smiled faintly. You're still terrible at that. The silence between us didn't feel dangerous anymore. Just unfinished. We sat. A few feet apart, like the space itself mattered. For a while, we didn't talk. The campus was quiet, finals week emptiness, the kind that makes every sound echo too long. I read your final essay, she said eventually. You wrote about honesty. I looked down. And? You sounded like someone trying to convince himself of something. I almost laughed. Maybe I was. She turned to me then, face open, unguarded in a way I hadn't seen before. What were you trying to say? I hesitated, fingers curling around the edge of the bench. That sometimes, telling the truth feels worse than lying. Her eyes softened. To yourself or to me? Both. That made her go still. She didn't look away, didn't move, just breath, slow and deep, like she'd been holding it in for weeks. I thought about what you said, she murmured. About wanting to understand why it felt real. I looked up. And? It was real, she said quietly. That's what scared me. Her words hit harder than I expected, not because they were dramatic, but because they weren't. Just plain truth, sitting between us. I nodded slowly. So what now? She shook her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. Now, nothing. We go back to our lives. That simple? No, she said. But it has to be. The rain had started again, faint drops, like a whisper against the pavement. She reached out, almost absently, brushing her hand against mine. This time, she didn't pull away. Her fingers rested there, light, trembling. You'll meet someone, she said. Someone who doesn't need to hide what she feels. And you? I asked. She smiled, just barely. I'll remember this as something that almost happened. Her hand slipped away, slow enough that I could feel the warmth linger. We both stood at the same time. Neither of us said goodbye. She adjusted her scarf, turned toward the street, then paused, just for a heartbeat, and looked back. A small nod. A quiet smile. Okay? She said. I swallowed. Okay. And that was it. No grand ending, no final words, just two people who almost crossed a line, and chose to stop before they forgot who they were. A year passed before I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I'd finished my degree, moved off campus, started working at a small publishing firm downtown. Life had become smaller, steadier, coffee before sunrise, evening walks that ended nowhere. Then one Friday morning, at 8:47 a.m., I stopped by the cafe near campus out of habit. The door chimed, same familiar sound, and there she was. Same table. Same cup of tea. She noticed me almost instantly. Her expression shifted, surprise, warmth, something unspoken. For a moment neither of us moved. Then she smiled. Still on time, I see. I laughed softly. Still tea, no sugar? Some things don't need fixing, she said. We talked like people who had known silence together, not rushing, not pretending. She asked about work, I asked about her daughter, who was apparently applying for graduate school. There were pauses, long and comfortable ones, the kind that used to feel like danger. I told her I'd started writing again. She nodded, almost proud. Good. I always thought you had something worth saying. I smiled. You were part of that. She stirred her tea, eyes lowered. You give me too much credit. No, I said gently. Just enough. When the cafe started to fill, she suggested a walk. The air was warm, late spring, the kind that carried a faint smell of wet pavement and new leaves. We ended up at the same bench near the faculty lot, still there, still a little uneven. She sat first. I joined her, careful not to make it symbolic, though it was. You ever think about that night? I asked quietly. She smiled, looking out toward the parking lot. Sometimes. Not because of what almost happened, but because of what didn't. I turned that over for a moment. You regret it? No, she said. It taught me something. What's that? That love doesn't always have to become a story to be real. The words settled between us like soft rain. We sat there for a while, no lessons, no walls, no rules to break. She took a sip from her thermos, offered it to me without a word. Tea, still no sugar. It was quiet, easy. The kind of peace that didn't need explaining. When it was time to go, she stood and looked at me, really looked. There was no hesitation this time, no hiding behind professionalism or guilt. Just two people who'd learned how to see each other without crossing any more lines. Take care, Daniel, she said. You too, Professor. She smiled, that same imperfect one that had started everything. Evelyn, she corrected gently. I nodded. Evelyn. As she walked away, I noticed she left her scarf on the bench. I picked it up, folded it neatly beside me, and let it sit there for a while before standing. It smelled faintly of cedar and rain. And for the first time, it didn't ache, it just felt right. Some lessons don't end when the semester does. Some just change shape.